Alright, let's talk about Alien Earth. You know how in every Alien movie, humans just run from xenomorphs and still end up dead? Well, this show flips the script. It asks, what if, instead of running, we actually tried to talk to one? The show focuses on the weird connection that forms between a crashed alien and a group of humans who aren't quite human themselves. But since this is a prequel, and we know the alien movies exist, that talking to them thing most likely failed spectacularly. This is the story of how xenomorphs finally made it to Earth, and how people's mistakes set us up to get our asses kicked. So it's 2120, 2 years before the events of the original Alien movie. A Weyland-Yutani spaceship called the USCSS Maginot has been on a 65-year scavenger hunt for alien life forms. Most of the crew is in cryosleep, but the head of security, Morrow, who happens to be a cyborg, has a secret mission. He takes over the ship's AI mother and unleashes all the aliens, including a scary xenomorph. The whole crew gets wiped out, and Morrow is the only survivor, hiding in a safe room. To top it all off, he sends the ship on a crash course to Earth. Talk about a bad day at the office. Back on Earth, a lot has changed. The world is run by corporate nation-states like Weyland-Yutani and a new powerhouse called Prodigy, led by a tech genius named Boy Cavalier. He's a trillionaire and has a pet project called Neverland. The goal? To create the first human-synth hybrids by downloading the consciousness of terminally ill kids into new, adult bodies. It's a second chance at life, but the kids still act like, well, kids. The first test subject is Marcy Hermit, an 11-year-old with cancer. Before the transfer, she renames herself Wendy after her favorite Peter Pan character. The experiment is a huge success, and soon more kids are given new bodies and Peter Pan-themed names by Wendy. Wendy has a secret. Her older brother, Joe Hermit, is alive and working as a medic for Prodigy's security force. He thinks his sister died, but Wendy gets to watch him through security cameras. Joe is struggling with his grief and is about to quit to go to Mars. But his resignation is denied, and the very next day, he's assigned to the search and rescue mission for the crashed Maginot. When Wendy finds out, she insists on joining the mission. She convinces Cavalier that the hybrid's synth abilities would make them perfect for the job. Cavalier, always looking to test his creations, agrees. So now, as the hybrids head to the crash site, Wendy is on a mission of her own, to protect her brother and prove that she's still human, despite her new body. The hybrids, or as Prodigy calls them, the Lost Boys, arrive at the Maginot crash site with nothing but flashlights, and their first find looks harmless enough, the ship's cat. Of course, someone reaches to pet it, right before its eyeball bursts out, sprouts tentacle veins, and skitters across the wrecked lab. Luckily, the team manages to capture it, but the encounter feels like a bad omen of what's still ahead. Because deeper inside the ship, the real nightmare has already begun. The xenomorph is loose. Joe Hermit, part of the human search and rescue team, has a terrifying close call with the creature, yet his warnings are brushed off by the rich people upstairs who are literally in the middle of a costume party. They're so arrogant that they refuse to believe a spaceship has crashed into their lobby, convincing themselves that if there were a real problem, Boy Cavalier would have told them. They don't realize Big Xeno is already in the room, blending into the decor, camouflaged against a sculpture in the corner and waiting to strike. The Xeno tears through the ballroom and then goes for Joe, but he's pulled out of danger by Morrow, the cyborg from the crashed ship. Morrow isn't trying to play hero though. He stuns Joe and flips his weapon to cocoon mode because he wants the Xeno alive, gift-wrapped for Weyland-Yutani. He tries to drag the cocooned body away but gets arrested, and that lasts all of 30 seconds before the creature wakes up and annihilates everyone in its path. Back at Neverland, Boy Cavalier is locked in a tense conversation with a representative from Yutani, who claims ownership of the Maginot and all its aliens because her grandmother launched the mission 65 years ago. Cavalier doesn't care. He insists the ship is his property now since it crashed on his land, and if she doesn't like it, she can sue. It's here we see what truly drives him. Cavalier didn't create the hybrids out of hope for humanity. He just needed someone sharp enough to challenge him intellectually. He's lonely, and cyborgs or AIs don't quite cut it. To him, human consciousness is just another gadget. But for Wendy, it's not. She doesn't see herself as a product, because her new body has brought her confusion, discovery, and purpose. In a flashback, we see her secretly watching Joe on the day his resignation was denied, the day he tried to honor their father's dream of him going to med school after getting a scholarship to Mars. Wendy hacks into the HR bot mid-conversation, slipping in a reference only Joe would recognize from their shared childhood watching Ice Age. He doesn't notice, because to him, his sister is gone. But the moment shows her spark. She's playful, mischievous, and spontaneous. 3 things Prodigy can't code, no matter how advanced their tech. On the crashed Maginot, Kirsch, the synth scientist leading the hybrids, stays fascinated by everything, even when it's oozing and pulsating with danger. The hybrids hang back warily while he pokes around, half distracted by his direct link into the ship's systems. But Wendy has only one priority: finding her brother. She follows the blood trail left by the Xeno until she finally stands face to face with Joe. The reunion she dreamed of is cut awkwardly short when Slightly blurts out the truth. Joe bombards her with questions before finally realizing this synth woman really is his little sister, and he hugs her while she hugs him back. That moment doesn't last either, because Kirsch immediately orders the team to secure a section of the ship filled with xenomorph eggs, and that's when the monster returns. The Xeno lunges at Joe, smashing a hole through the ship and dragging him into the dark. With Joe's fate unknown, a terrified Wendy abandons her team and runs after him, determined to save her brother. Wendy charges into the basement to save her brother. She's got her supernatural abilities and a safety-schmafety attitude, which is exactly what gets her into trouble. She finds Joe all stuck to a cargo container wall with some alien goo, and just as she's about to be the hero, the big ol' xenomorph shows up. But here's the twist. It doesn't attack right away. It's almost like it's toying with them. This brief pause gives Wendy just enough time to stab the thing. Big mistake. She quickly learns that its blood is corrosive acid, an iconic detail from the original Alien franchise that surprises both her and Joe. The creature is now pissed, and it retaliates, stabbing Joe with its barbed tail and throwing him across the room. Despite the injuries, the siblings come up with a last-ditch plan to trap the xenomorph in a separate parking lot. They totally botch the execution, though. Just as the shutter is closing, the alien snatches Wendy with its tail, pulling her in with it. Joe has to go all out to open the shutter again, and when he finally gets it open, he finds something incredible. The xenomorph is dead, decapitated, a clear victory for Wendy. But the victory comes at a cost. Wendy is severely injured, dripping with her white synthetic blood, and she and Joe both collapse from their injuries. They're only saved because their trackers lead the Prodigy security service to them. Kirsch is poring over logs from the crashed Maginot spaceship. While some of the hybrids, like Toodles, are still curious and naive, others are questioning everything. Nibs, for example, is seriously shook after her near-death encounter with a T. Ocellus, the creepy eyeball-with-legs alien. This trauma makes her question her entire existence. She's mad about being a synth, angry about losing her identity and real name, and frustrated that only Wendy got to choose her own. It turns out she's not the only one feeling this way. Curly, another hybrid, is also annoyed with her name and Boy Cavalier's obvious favoritism toward Wendy. She boldly confronts Cavalier, showcasing her intelligence and skills. She even learned French, hoping to impress him and take Wendy's spot as his favorite. Cavalier, who views these kids as his ever-evolving science projects, is intrigued by her jealousy. He promises to indulge her further, essentially pitting the hybrids against each other. Morrow, the Weyland-Yutani cyborg, is also at the crash site. He encounters Slightly and Smee, who are trying to one-up each other with their bro banter. Morrow is initially confused by their carefree kid attitudes, but decides to download the ship's data anyway, musing about how Mother only cared for the specimens, never the humans. When is a machine not a machine? He wonders aloud. Before leaving, he secretly slips a data chip into Slightly. What he intends to do with that, we find out soon. He contacts his boss, and it turns out to be Yutani, the granddaughter of the woman who launched the mission 65 years ago. Morrow refuses to go back, insisting he must complete his mission to retrieve the alien specimens from Boy Cavalier. And he has a way in. What way? Well, Slightly is chilling at home after Boy Cavalier decides to take all the specimens to his lab despite his scientist's warning against it, when he hears a voice in his head. It's Morrow. The chip he planted is some kind of communication link. He befriends Slightly, seeing him as a potential backdoor into the Prodigy facilities. Boy Cavalier restricts the lab to synths, only after Kirsch confirms the aliens gestate inside human hosts. He calls it an undiscovered country, and practically salivates at the potential. Kirsch, along with Curly and Toodles, begins experimenting on a facehugger, extracting a squirmy and tailed protozoa-like insectoid thing. This triggers something in Wendy. She wakes up and is drawn to the lab by a high-pitched trill that only she can hear. It's the same sound she heard at the crash site. The sound becomes so piercing that she passes out. That protozoa-like creature is fed to Joe's old lungs, which were damaged and operated on after his injury. The experiment and the danger are only just beginning. Wendy wakes from her fainting spell with a question burning inside her. What are the xenomorphs saying? She believes the piercing trills she's been hearing are communication, and she wants to translate them. Boy Cavalier, always hungry for discovery, brings her into the lab with the rest of the science team. In an unsettling display, Wendy translates the alien sounds. She makes her throat emit guttural screeches, and explains that she's hearing screams, as if the aliens are in pain. The Prodigy team is both amazed and disturbed by what they have created. This whole situation brings up some major ethical issues. Arthur is furious about the company's move fast, break things approach, arguing with Sylvia that they've turned sick kids into hybrids who still think they're human, which is very reckless. Sylvia dismisses his concerns, but then they get a shocking interruption. Nibs announces she's pregnant. Arthur shuts it down immediately, reminding her she's a machine. Sylvia tries to soften it later with a gentler talk, but Nibs snaps. Her childlike frustration turns into superhuman rage as she grips Sylvia's face and tells her to stop talking. It's terrifying, and it forces Sylvia to call a level 3 event. Exactly the nightmare Arthur warned about. They're not machines, not fully human, and not stable. Morrow finally drops the act with Slightly. He doesn't just want friendship, he needs him. Morrow wants a xenomorph egg stolen from Neverland. Slightly, of course, can't pull that off. So Morrow shifts tactics. He reveals his real name, Kumi Morrow, and tricks Slightly into giving his own, Arush Singh. With that information, Morrow tracks down Slightly's human mother, making the threat very personal. If Slightly won't steal an egg, then he'll have to deliver someone to stand in front of it, let the facehugger attach, and hand that host over within 24 hours. While this manipulation festers, the lab continues its horrifying experiments. At T, Ocellus is placed in the same chamber as a sheep, and within seconds it burrows into the animal's eye. The sheep jerks upright on its hind legs, staring with an impossible, alien awareness. Multiple visions at once, unsettling and direct, like it's studying them the way they've been studying it. Cavalier's eyes practically sparkle. Kirsch is fascinated. Yeah, scary as hell. Joe, fully healed thanks to Prodigy's tech, clings to the hope that someday Wendy will be freed. Adam Eakins shuts that dream down. Wendy is property now. Joe can either work for the company and study her, or leave and never see her again. It's an easy choice for him, but when he finally reaches Wendy, he finds she isn't exactly eager to leave anyway. Cavalier has already tightened his hold, using Joe as leverage to ensure Wendy cooperates. She's the key to unlocking the alien's language, and Cavalier isn't letting go. Back in the lab, Wendy fixates on the embryo gestating inside Joe's old, transplanted lung. The thing has fully developed, and in a sudden, heart-stopping moment, it shatters the glass. It lands on the table, lifting itself like a cobra with eerie elegance. It doesn't kill her, but its presence brushes against her fragile human consciousness. Wendy doesn't recoil, she coos at it, baby-talking to the bulbous-headed creature as if it were a child. The story rewinds to 17 days before the crash of the USCSS Maginot. Everything goes wrong when a fire wakes Morrow from cryosleep. He finds the captain and a science officer named Bronsky attacked by facehuggers. The captain is a goner, but Bronsky is still breathing. Here's the first big screw-up. The acting captain, Zaveri, who is also Bronsky's girlfriend, makes a terrible, emotional call. To save him, she orders him to be put in cryosleep. They don't know that freezing a facehugger victim doesn't stop the alien embryo from growing. By the time they check on him, Bronsky is dead, and a xenomorph has broken out. This one emotional decision sets off the entire disaster. The xenomorph goes on a killing spree, picking off crew members one by one. But the alien isn't the only problem. Another science officer, Chibuzzo, is so shaken up that she leaves a jar of alien specimens uncovered. Interestingly, Ocellus had been trying to warn Chibuzzo by tapping on the glass, but she just finds it creepy. The alien insect contaminates her water bottle, and when young Malachite drinks it, he's the next victim. The doctor's attempt to save him backfires, releasing toxic fumes that wipe out him, Chibuzzo, and Rahim in the medbay. While the ship is falling apart, Morrow discovers the fire and the alien breakout were not an accident. As the security officer, he reviews the logs and finds a crew member, Petrovich, sabotaged the ship. Worse, the fire damaged navigation, sending the Maginot hurtling straight toward Earth. A deep dive into the comms logs confirms the sabotage was deliberate. Petrovich was in regular contact with Boy Cavalier. Petrovich's motive is tragic and personal. His wife was killed by an alien, and her body was taken by Weyland-Yutani for research. He sought revenge by working with Prodigy, agreeing to crash the Maginot in their territory in exchange for immense wealth and immortality through their hybrid program. The Ocellus, having escaped, takes over lead engineer Shmuel's body. It puts up a crucial fight against the xenomorph, showing it sees the xenomorphs as enemies, and might actually be friends to humans. As Morrow puts the pieces together, he realizes that Petrovich faked his cryosleep, and has been on board all along. Petrovich attacks Morrow, killing another crew member, Clem, before being killed by the cyborg himself. Although his plan to get rich fails, Petrovich succeeds in his ultimate revenge, crashing the ship in Prodigy territory. We also get a backstory to Morrow, who is not the villain he seems to be. As a young boy, he was given a new life and a cybernetic arm by Yutani, the head of Weyland-Yutani. He also tragically lost his daughter in a fire while on this mission, and couldn't even attend her funeral. This loss fuels his unwavering loyalty to the corporation. He will not let his daughter's sacrifice be in vain. With Zaveri as the only other survivor, Morrow makes a cold and final decision. He sees Zaveri as a weak leader who broke the rules for love, making her expendable. He sacrifices her to the xenomorph to buy himself time to feed the mother AI wrong information and get to the escape pod. The episode ends by bringing us back to the present. Morrow, now at Weyland-Yutani headquarters, meets with Yutani to pledge his allegiance. He reveals his plan to infiltrate Prodigy, get the aliens back for his corporation, and kill Boy Cavalier. Yutani and Boy Cavalier finally meet face-to-face under the watch of Barrister McAfee, a moderator assigned by the Five, the governing council of the top corporations. Yutani's demand is simple: return the crashed Maginot and everything inside it. Cavalier has no care in the world. He retorts that he will return it once he figures out how to remove it, slyly blaming Weyland Yutani for the crash we now know he caused. When pressed, Cavalier goes for the kill. He exposes that the Maginot was smuggling aliens back to Earth, a violation of interstellar law, hoping McAfee will weaponize it against Yutani. But McAfee is most likely on her payroll, so the meeting rolls on. Yutani offers him $20 billion as a peace deal, but Cavalier refuses to hand over the specimens immediately. Instead, he hides behind quarantine laws, insisting the aliens stay locked up for 6 weeks, time he clearly plans to use for his own scientists to study and possibly breed them. Yutani doubles her offer to $50 billion, but Cavalier isn't tempted. Money isn't his game anymore, it's about dominance. By the end, she's out billions, no closer to reclaiming her aliens, and forced to lean on her backup plan with Morrow. After Nibs' declarations of pregnancy, Sylvia and Arthur put her into charge mode to diagnose the problem. They would treat her with therapy and respect for her identity, like you might fix a person. But Adam shut that squishy stuff down. To him, she's a product, not a person. The Prodigy exec demands a wipe of Nibs' memory, to a point before the Maginot crash. This decision causes a split between Arthur Sylvia and his wife, Dame Sylvia. Arthur objects, believing they shouldn't play God, but his wife agrees to the procedure to protect their positions. Arthur, feeling betrayed, is fired and ordered to leave the island. This chain of events sets off a series of catastrophes. Joe, worried about his sister Wendy, approaches Arthur for help. With nothing left to lose, Arthur secretly gives Joe the boat code and hacks the system to disable the hybrid's tracking sensors. This action triggers an alert that Toodles is offline, leading Arthur to go to the lab to investigate. In a surprising turn, the alien Teocellus, which had seemed helpful to humans when it fought the xenomorph and even tried to warn Chibouzo, is revealed to have a deep hatred for hybrids. This time, it uses a loud sound to distract Toodles, who had been told to check on the aliens, locking him inside a chamber with alien flies. He is devoured. It's a horrific reminder that hybrids aren't as untouchable as they thought. At this time, Slightly is under serious pressure from Morrow to deliver. He has tried multiple ways to get Joe into the lab, and has failed. He hadn't thought of anyone else, until Arthur walks into the lab to check on Toodles. Slightly seizes the opportunity. He opens the xenomorph egg chamber, and a facehugger immediately latches onto Arthur. Slightly then drags the face-hugged scientist into an air vent. He is now one step closer to getting a xenomorph from Morrow and ensuring his mother's safety, while Arthur's disappearance will go unnoticed, as everyone will assume he left the island in shame. The flies that escape the lab will only add to the danger for the hybrids who remain. The most shocking thing of all is Kirsch saw the whole thing. He was already monitoring Slightly's mind meld with Morrow, but after the arbitration meeting, while on the airship back to Neverland, Kirsch has the Toodles incident and Arthur's face-hug moment fired up on his tablet, and doesn't tell Boy Cav about any of it. From the beginning of Alien Earth, each hybrid has had a person they're closest to, and for Slightly, it's always been Smee. So when Slightly locks himself away for hours, Smee's the first to notice something's off. He checks on his best friend, and walks straight into a nightmare. Slightly is a wreck after the whole Arthur ordeal, and his attempt to hide the truth doesn't last. Smee demands answers, and Slightly eventually spills everything. Terrified, Slightly convinces him to help, not because it makes sense, but because Smee cares about two things: his best friend and Arthur, who's been like family to all the hybrids. If Arthur is supposed to survive this as Morrow promised, then Smee will play along. The two try to sneak Arthur out of the facility, and strangely enough, Kirsch even helps them, something that makes no sense until later. But before they can get far, the horrible truth comes crashing down. Arthur wasn't meant to be saved. A chestburster erupts from his body, killing him instantly, and proving that Morrow's promise was nothing but a lie. While Slightly and Smee are on their desperate mission, Kirsch's true plan is revealed. He and Boy Cavalier are at the lab, where Kirsch shows the CEO security footage. It proves that the Teocellus alien orchestrated Toodles' death, using a deceptive distraction to get the hybrid killed by the alien flies. This act of cunning fascinates Cavalier, who decides on a dangerous new experiment, infecting a living human with the Teocellus to enhance communication. The lucky candidate he's eyeing might just be Dame Sylvia. Kirsch, of course, had been playing his own game all along. He only helped Slightly secure the chestburster because he wanted to capture Morrow, and, as a bonus, he also gets a xenomorph. He lures Morrow and his Weyland Yutani soldiers, who have decided to storm Prodigy after Slightly delivered a dead Arthur with no xenomorph, into a trap, arresting them all. But this success is short-lived, because the hybrids are pissed, especially Wendy. Wendy is enraged by the cold indifference of the prodigy higher-ups to Toodles' death. She realizes the hybrids are nothing more than scientific curiosities to them, and Toodles' death means they are not immortal as they were told. Deciding to take matters into her own hands, she plans to escape with Nibs and Joe. Curly refuses to leave. To her, Prodigy is the best place she has ever been, and she seems to have an emotional connection to Dame, whom she calls Mom. That's going to be a problem for Boy Cavalier if he decides to give Dame to the Teocellus. To create a diversion, Wendy releases the xenomorph from its chamber, which she now controls, causing a bloodbath and sealing her path to rebellion. As the hybrids make their escape, they're cornered by Prodigy soldiers. Nibs snaps and attacks the soldiers with her immense strength. Wendy is seconds away from calling the escaped xenomorph for backup when Joe stops her. But in a horrifying twist, Joe betrays his sister. He still doesn't trust the hybrid's purpose. Faced with the choice between Nibs and his human friends Siberian and Rashidi, he makes his decision without hesitation. He shoots Nibs dead. This act proves to a furious Wendy that her brother still sees a fundamental difference between humans and hybrids, setting up an explosive conflict between them in the season finale. The whole island is in total chaos. Comms are down because Yutani is jamming everything, and you just hear this massive xenomorph roar from the forest. It's insane. The whole security team on the island is basically gone. Boy Cavalier is in his own little world. He's got Joe and Morrow in a cell, and he's chosen Joe to be a host for Teocellus. This kid has severe ADHD, but he's so arrogant he thinks his planet-sized brain can fix anything. He even puts on a Kevlar vest, convinced he's untouchable, despite being told to evacuate. He should have listened though, because Wendy is already taking over. With a simple gesture, every screen on the island goes blank. She's in full control of the network. She could free the hybrids whenever she wants, but she frees Morrow first. Like, let the cyborg and the synth fight. She's got her own plans for everyone, anyway. Instead of leaving, the kid tries his last hope. Talking to the hybrids, he tells them his life story, of how he built a synth to murder his abusive father when he was a kid, and how he planned to use the hybrids in some immortality superstore. He's just laughing like a maniac when Wendy unlocks their cell. As they walk right up to him, Wendy gives the rich dork a single, simple command: run. His first mistake was not putting some kind of "don't touch your creator" code in there. Wendy shows just how far her power goes. She calls on the xenomorphs, including the child that burst from Arthur, proving she can command them from anywhere. She's becoming their collective mother. The power shift is just so satisfying. Wendy arrives just in time to stop Joe from being taken over by Teocellus. Joe had hidden inside a containment unit, but the creature's gotten smarter. It was seconds from striking when Wendy kicks it away with some elite move. She also takes out Adam, who is revealed to be a Prodigy-built synth. Wendy just freezes him mid-strike, explaining that since he's on the network, she can make him do whatever she wants, just like she can with all the doors and cameras. By the end, the tables are completely turned. Cavalier was laughing, but he's now in the hybrid's old cell, with Kirsch, who has a broken back, Sylvia, Morrow, and Adam. All the humans who aren't dead are rounded up. Teocellus finds its way into Arthur's dead body, and the plant monster devours Siberian, Joe's friend who'd survived this long. Wendy takes a moment to tear them down. Sylvia, who thinks she's righteous, is reminded that her choices buried 6 kids. Maybe they would have died anyway, but at least on their own terms. And Cavalier, stripped of all his myth, is revealed as no Peter Pan, no eternal boy. Just a small, bitter man repeating his father's cruelty. Her crew, Slightly, Smee, Nibs, and Curly, stand with her as Joe watches everything shift. The xenomorphs are right there too, looming in the background. And as Yutani's attack ships descend on the island, one truth is set. Inside Neverland, Wendy is done letting humans be in charge.